my house, but they won't come another.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the regular council meeting of the Township of McNabb Braeside for Tuesday, February the 15th to order. Let's see, Councillor Lang is, she had informed me, hopefully the CAO as well. She was unable to attend this evening. Before we move to the adoption of the agenda, did everyone get the additions? And I'll just go through them. Under the item 4.1 at the bottom, last three, there'll be revised limited hydro G and sewage system impact assessment, revised site plan, and County of Renfrew planning report. And 4.2 at the very bottom, County of Renfrew planning report, and 4.3 County of Renfrew planning report. And in item 8.7 grassland stewardship initiative report, and 8.8 excess soil regulation report. I believe that is all the changes. So I need a mover and seconder for the amended agenda, please. Deputy Mayor Armstrong, Councillor Jake, but all in favor? Carried, thank you. I'm going to turn the chair position over to the deputy mayor now for the planning matters.
Thank you very much, sir. So still only three items here. Can I have a mover and seconder, please, for 4.1, application of minor variance for April and Chuck Moore. Oh, wait, Lindsay.
Excuse me.
Sorry, we didn't do the disclosure of pecuniary interest.
No,
If we could just do that, please.
One of these meetings, I'm going to have say that I hope that I have some. Anyway, any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof.
no.
Councillor Jacob.
I'd like to declare a matter of pecuniary interest in relation to item 12.1 on the agenda as a full-time staff member of the town of Iron Prior.
Thank you. So noted. Deputy Mayor, please.
All right, did we get a mover and seconder for 4.1? No, can I have one, please? Councillor Jacob, Councillor Broom. Bruce, anything to add to this minor variance application for the Moores?
Thank you, Chair. So no, I don't have anything. I hope I'll have the same planning report. It was just completed this morning, so I hope that you guys all have it. I apologize for the short notice. So the recommendation is that this application be approved. And it's recommended that the Committee of Adjustment, when it goes to them, have two conditions attached to it. One, that development agreement be entered into. So there was a hydrogeological assessment that was done for this application just to confirm that adding a second dwelling unit to that property will they'll have enough water to do it without impacting other neighbors, and also that the increased density won't result in any negative impacts from the septic systems on their neighbors. So they were submitted that hydrogeological assessment and found that it could be done without having any negative impacts. But it also did indicate that there was some high sodium levels. So there's two conditions there. One, that the hydrogeological assessment be, the recommendation be implemented through that development agreement. And number two is that the local medical officer of health gets notified of the high sodium levels and that exceeding the health warning limit. So that's pretty standard, nothing that's too surprising. And the recommendation is that the committee recommend that the Committee of Adjustment approve that. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks, Bruce. Any questions or comments from council? All in favor of the recommendation? Carried. Mover and seconder, please, for 4.2, Joe Pianosi application. Mayor Peckett and Councillor Jacob. Anything on this one, Bruce, that you haven't already provided?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So note that this is application one of three applications. So the first one is a new residential lot. application number 2, which is the next one, is for a lot addition, adding property onto the retained portion. And then application 3 is, which is being held in abeyance because application 2 has to move forward through the process first. So you don't have that in front of you today, but that's going to be a further severance of another creation of a new lot, but they have to let that lot addition go through first. So the recommendation for this application B2521, this is the first application proposing to create a new residential lot. And the recommendation is that the application be approved. We are still just waiting for information on MDS. So once we have that MDS information, that application can go forward. So it's recommended that the committee approve the consent application subject to the standard condition of a plan of survey. And then also though that favorable MDS calculations be submitted.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Questions or comments from council on this one? All in favor of the recommendation? Carried. Mover and seconder for 4.3, please. Councillor Broome, Councillor Jacob, questions or comments from council on this one? Assume not. All in favor of the recommendation? Carried. I will relinquish the chair, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. We're on to delegations and presentations. And it's here Stephanie Cameron from Braylock Road. Stephanie, I need a mover and seconder for it. Councillor Broome, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. All in favor? Carried. Is Stephanie there? There she is. You're muted, Stephanie.
There we go. Apologies. Thanks for your time today, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to, I realize that the council feels that the issue with our road has been resolved. However, as representative for some of the families on Braylock Road, we have some further questions that I'd like to review with you. Before we get there, I just wanted to kind of speak as to who we are on this section of road. I feel it really speaks to who we are. We aren't new to the township. The majority of us have lived on this street as multi-generations, and some of us have lived in our homes here for over 45 years. People have grown up on these family homes only to have moved a few houses down. And me personally, we moved in and took over my husband's grandfather's homestead over 25 years ago. So we call this area home. And we've been extremely patient as we've been watching and living through the deterioration of this road. In 2019, I called the township and was told that 2022 was going to be our year. So here we've been waiting ever so patiently. We even got a letter that was delivered to each household by Plan Mac Engineering, advising us of the upcoming changes in 2022. So it wasn't until we called the township to actually dispel a rumor that we heard that we found out the specifics about the current situation. So, you know, quite frankly, I feel like maybe we've been too quiet, too complicit, thinking our turn's coming, when in fact we all kind of know sometimes that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and maybe we haven't been loud enough to really express how we feel. As it stands, we feel like we've got minimal services where we live now. We all know way too well that the internet is an issue around here, as I heard Councillor Broome just mention. But I know that that's out of your control. But this is not out of your control, sir. I know, Mr. Mayor, that you have said that the plan was always 2023, but we've never been told this. And as a result of this, it makes us a little nervous about what is going to happen next year. We feel like we keep on being pushed off. With the election coming up, we have no guarantee that our road will be paved next year. In fact, in the council meeting on January 25th, when this was discussed, we heard a few council members actually say that they didn't know if they could commit to a road being paved next year because it wasn't in the budget. So we feel a little concerned, a little threatened that our paved road will be reverting to gravel and the impact that that's going to have on our property worth and our vehicles. The expression that this hits close to home speaks loudly for each one of us here. How do we know that next year we won't be told that the COVID prices are too high? Again, we understand that you have to work within a budget. We all get that. But what we want to talk to you is about some possible solutions for the best use of our tax dollars. Part of our concern and why we are suggesting these options is because we're worried about how the road will be maintained next year after it's pulverized, if at all. We have gravel trucks that go up and down this road from pit to pit all day long. And we're worried about how that travel is going to, or that traffic is going to impact the pulverized road. If our road is pulverized, it's going to have to be maintained. And that means graded and calcium put down for dust control. And that's an extra cost that could be avoided if we just move to paving our road. So as a small group, we got together to discuss our situation and wanted to present 3 or 4 options to the council to think about. What I want to ask the council is if you want me to just speak to all 4 now, or would you like me to stop after each one?
I would think if you went through them one at a time, and then I'll ask council if they have any questions or comments or need clarification on each one. Thank you.
Okay. So our first option, Mr. Mayor, is to just pave the road this year and defer part of the payment, which is $500K, to January 1st of 2023 and build that into the tender. That would save the cost of the pulverization and maintenance, plus any additional costs associated with returning to complete the project.
Ms. Coughlin.
So
I don't believe we can defer payment, like have it paved, and the people that are doing the paving, they won't accept their money being deferred for a year.
Yeah.
I've never actually heard of that being done anywhere, Stephanie. So the first option is not viable. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm just curious, Mr. Mayor, if we've ever asked, because we do have some people on this road that actually do work for the, construction and in utility groups and other larger companies that do defer payments. So I know it is a common practice out there. I just didn't know if we've ever asked.
Ms. Coughlin, please.
The other factor is just from a budgeting perspective. So annually, council goes through the whole capital project review and determines what roads are going to be completed. And that also includes the financing that goes with that. So our budget has already been set for 2022, including all of the financing. So now to add a road after the fact, there's no financing for it. There's no sources of revenue for that for this year. And even from an auditing perspective from year end, I'm sure the auditors would have great exception if there's I don't even know what the cost would be. I'd have to defer that to our Director of Public Works. But I would hedge, several hundreds of thousands of dollars being left unfinanced, which is definitely not a practice that the township should be getting into.
Thank you. So I think, Stephanie, number one
Thank you.
is not viable for the township.
Okay. The second option then we have is, would it be viable then to use the reserve to pay for it or borrow against it? And do we have any reserve money? So the reason we're asking that is that this would also save the cost of pulverization and maintenance, plus any additional costs associated with returning to complete the project. We feel the cost to borrow versus pulverizing and returning to complete would offset and save the township money.
Yeah, first of all, whether we pulverize it in 2022 or 2023, the same, and Mr. Frew can correct me, it'd be the same process, whether it's done this year or next year. And as far as, I'm sorry, you're suggesting that we borrow the money somewhere?
I was wondering if we have the reserve. So I know we used to have a reserve that we used to borrow against when we had other issues or other projects that had to be brought forward. And yeah, is it a viable option to borrow against that? And I'm not suggesting, Mr. Mayor, that you pulverize one year or another. What I'm saying is borrow. I know we said that the township didn't have the money to do the paving this year. So is there possible to borrow against the reserve to pave versus pulverizing, not pulverize in 2023?
Ms. Coughlin, please.
So just in regards to the reserves, yes, the township does have a paved road reserve. We do make contributions to it annually. But through our 10-year forecast and beyond, the funds are kind of allocated to various capital projects as they come up each year. They're not designated for any one particular project, but there is a definite significant portion that's allocated each year out of the reserves to help pay for those road reconstruction projects. So as an example, if this project were to be included in the 2023 budget, we would look at all funding sources, whether it's through the Community Building Fund, which was formerly the gas tax, or we have OSEF funds that we sometimes use towards roads projects. Again, that's a provincial funding. And then the balance is either funded by taxation or through monies that are available in the reserves. So those are kind of the four options. We try to use those four sources as the primary sources and avoid getting into debt and borrowing for roads projects. We have limited borrowing as it is, but the ones that we have debentures on are more facility related and large facility debentures.
Thank you. So the reserves that you're talking about, there's no opportunity to use those, right? What I'm hearing is that those are already been allocated.
Yeah, so in 2022, the amount of money that we can take out of the reserve to help finance the roads project has already been earmarked to specific programs. The other thing too that staff do on an annual basis is we're constantly monitoring and managing that amount that's in the reserve to not only meet the existing requirements, but also our future requirements. So yes, at any given point, it might look like, oh, wow, you've got a lot of money in there, but we need to sometimes have those extra funds because then in any given year, we could be taking out significant dollars out of it. I don't have the figures for this year in particular. Just one second. I'm just going to pull up the budget just as a quick example, just to give you an idea of how much money actually goes in and out, just to give you an idea.
So, and I'm not suggesting I know accounting practices by any means, but is there not any opportunity then to borrow out of that reserve then and put it back in when the budget comes through in 2023?
You can't, unfortunately, you can't quote unquote borrow from a reserve.
Okay.
The reserves are set aside for specific purposes. In this case, it is designated for roads, but in 2022, for example, we're taking out $776,000, almost $777,000 out of that reserve to help finance over 1.8 million, almost $1.9 million of roads programs just for 2022. And there's about $660,000 going into it.
The other thing, Stephanie, is a number of years ago, the provincial government mandated that all municipalities have an asset management plan. And what that means is that everything that the municipality has, and very soon it's going to be even itemized down to picks and shovels, is going to be declared as an asset. And one of our biggest, the biggest asset is our roads. And we have to put, because the roads is an ongoing project, like after you do a road, it goes to the bottom of the list, but 10, 12 years later, it comes back up to be redone again. And what the province mandates us to do is to put money aside every year to help pay for those projects. So probably some of the money that we are using on Braylock Road this year was put into reserves a few years ago under our asset management plan to help pay for this.
Okay. All right, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Maybe we'll just move on for option 3 then, just in light of time. So our other option then we're asking is, could we not put down one lift of asphalt from McLean to Stevenson this year? And that would.
We lost you. Are you there?
One lift of asphalt from, oh, can you hear me? I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hear you now.
Okay, I'm gonna shut the cameras down, but hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So could we put one lift of asphalt from McLean Drive to Stevenson Drive? And that would free up money to do one lift of asphalt from Stevenson to the bush. And then you could put the second lift in 23 from McLean to Stevenson, and that would just save the cost of pulverization completely. You can see where we're going with this. We're trying to get away from pulverization.
Yeah, I see where you're going. Just in our conversation, I think I mentioned that we did the same thing with Maple Bend Road a couple of years ago, and it was in really bad condition as well. And it was going to take another year to get it done, but it was in such bad condition that we pulverized that road the year before it was being paved. And we graded it and put calcium on it and kept it, well, in a lot better condition than the existing road was. And our CAO can maybe add a comment on there about Maple Bend, because she lived on that road. CAO.
Yeah, it was a vast improvement over the dodging of potholes on our road. And the grading made it easy to drive on, and the maintenance was great on it.
Is it paved now?
Yes, it is.
It is now, yeah, the year after they paved it.
I appreciate that. I mean, that wasn't, we were more looking to understand if we could go ahead and not pulverize and just do the asphalt 1 year, do the one asphalt, one lift now and one lift next. My last suggestion, Mr. Mayor and Council, if it seems that some of the reasons or the suggestions that we're putting forth aren't viable, which wondering if they aren't, is maybe we could, it just would be to close our road and leave it for local traffic only, and not pulverize it and then just pave it next year. We're extremely worried that we're going to have a pulverized road, which will not be resolved, that with the election year next year and just with no commitment to getting our road paved, I've got to tell you that, speaking on behalf of all the families on the road, we're extremely worried about that.
Okay, so a couple of meetings ago, I brought this problem of Braylock Road back to council.
Mhm.
After talking to one of the residents on the roadway.
Mhm.
I brought the topic back to council because I wasn't happy on the way that council had left it in the previous meeting when it was discussed. And at that, and in that meeting, and I guess, I don't know whether, I guess it's on YouTube or not. Anyway, I brought forth a resolution to pave from McLean to Stevenson in 2022, pulverize from Stevenson to the Bush in 2022, and pave from Stevenson to the Bush in 2023. And that was passed unanimously by council. So now we have a plan to move forward that's been approved by this council. It would take a lot of doing if the next council comes in and wants to change that, they'll have a difficult time in doing it. So I think I can fairly confidently state that the resolution that we passed, which is exactly what I just said, will move forward in 2022 and 2023. Now, the idea of not pulverizing the roadway that's there now. I mean, the person I was talking to down there said even in the only time it's even bearable to drive on is in the wintertime when all the holes are full of ice and snow. Well, I drove on the road shortly after that when it was full of ice and snow, and it's terrible. It just rattle you right out of your seat.
Yes, sir.
So I certainly believe that the pulverizing the road will be a huge improvement to the current condition for the one summer through the winter that it needs to go. I don't know what else I could say on that, but I see some councillors had their hand. Oh, the CAO has her hand up. We'll go to the CAO and then Councillor Jacob and then Mr. Frew.
Sorry, I just need a mover and seconder to extend, please.
Oh, okay. Deputy Mayor Armstrong, Councillor Broom, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
We have to go, if you go beyond 15 minutes, we have to do that. So
I'm sorry.
So I just had a question, Mr. Mayor, through you to the Director of Public Works. I know when this Spurlock Road last came to council, there was a recommendation that the project be tendered for both years together. So I just wanted to see if you could kind of explain, just for members of the public present and for council information, what the tendering process would look like if both years could be tendered together and how that works with budget considerations and such.
Thank you. Mr. Frew, please.
Yeah, so just by way of update, the tender for this project, it will be going out tomorrow. And as per our discussion at the February 1st meeting, council agreed to tender both of these projects at the same time. So the tender is going out with two phases. So the first phase will be from McLean to Stevenson and will be completed in the year 2022. And as well as the pulverization of the rest of the road. And then phase two will be completing the remainder of the work in 2023. So as of when the tender closes, which is set for March 8th, we will know the cost of both phases, as well as we'll be, if council decides to enter into a contract, that contract will be for the complete amount of work for both phases. So the work for the second phase will have to go through unless the township is looking to incur significant costs with breaking such contract, right? So based on that, the direction from council in January, and that was also in the February meeting, that was council's direction was to proceed with this work in the two phases, and the way that we have it structured, you know, it seems guaranteed, to say lightly, or to one way to say it, I guess, is that, both phases will be completed in 2022 and 2023. So that tender is set to go out tomorrow.
And so Stephanie, if the tender goes out and we accept the tender, which I believe we will, it's, Mr. Frew said he could pretty well guarantee then that in 2023, your section of the road will be paved. But
Okay.
I still think that we should go ahead and pulverize that end of it in 2022. You'll find that the condition of the road to drive on, you could probably drive through a plowed farmer's field and it would be better than the road that you're driving on now. And I certainly appreciate that fact, because I'm on that road a fair bit. So it will, the pulverization of the road, which has to be done anyways, I think will make it a lot better for 2022. Deputy Mayor Armstrong, please.
Thanks. So Stephanie, just on that last point about entering in a contract following successful completion of the tender, that's going to contractually obligate us to follow through. Otherwise, we pay severe penalties for whoever is awarded the contract. So that's as close as a guarantee as you can get to seeing the project go through without any issues. Second thing, I'm just curious why there seems to be a negative slant on pulverization. We've got our Director of Public Works. I know our road supervisors in favor of it. We've done it in the past, on Maple Bend, where directly the year after, just as this plan, we are paving it. So we haven't seen any history of it being an issue, and I'm just wondering why there seems to be a concern from the residents on Braylock in that area.
It's not so much the issue around the pulverization, it's the unknown as to whether we would see the project completed where we'd actually move to a paved road. We have heard, that there's talk about reverting us to gravel, and that's something that nobody wants to even entertain. We take pride in our homes and our vehicles, and it's not something we would ever want to revert to. So we just want to make sure we're not going backwards, that we continue to move forwards. And I really appreciate you explaining to me the process around the tenders and pretty much the guarantee and the penalties that would have to be paid if we didn't go through with the project. So that I think will help the feelings of the community members for sure.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thanks, sir. And just to add, Stephanie, we don't know what's going to happen with who is voted in to the next council, but as the mayor said, it's administratively difficult for a new council to change direction on this particular project, not only from a contract law perspective, but just the administration internal behind it itself would not make it a pleasant exercise at all, let alone how much money it would cost us to pay to the winning bidder for, in all essence, changing the essence of the contract. It would cost us a boatload of money in order to do, not us, the township. It would just be, well, it wouldn't be the smartest thing to do, that's for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to hear us out and explaining the process to me. Thank you very much.
Okay, Stephanie, thanks for your questions and your concern, and we hope we've alleviated some of the concerns and stuff. And as I said before, after listening to a couple of folks down there, brought that back and we passed the resolution. So now we're we're pretty well locked into doing what we said we were going to do. And a new council coming, yes, they could defer it, but that would be like $100,000 plus would be nothing to try and get out of a contract. That might just be the legal fees, so.
Okay,
So it's as close to being like it's 99.9% locked in to be done in the manner that we've explained here this evening.
okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I look forward to the day when we're driving down this road without any potholes.
Okay, the day it's done paving, I'm gonna come and knock on your door and take you for a ride on the new pavement.
Sounds like a date. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, moving on to item 7. Mover and seconder for the adoption of the previous council minutes for February the 1st. Mover and seconder, Councillor Broom, Councillor Jacob. Any questions or problems with the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor as presented? Carried, thank you. On to reports of committee and council. 8.1, library board representative. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Armston, Councillor Broom. Ms. Lee, are you speaking on this? I just, all I can add is that our current representative, Ms. Stewart, has stepped back from the position, which leaves it open. The township should have a representative on the library board. So I guess, Ms. Lee, are you looking for direction to advertise for someone, or is there someone stepped up to?
No, we'll have to advertise. We've had nobody come forward.
Okay, and if any council member knows of someone who might be interested in this, I'll call it a job, a volunteer job for the township, we'd be pleased to hear from them. Any comments or questions on that? All in favor of receiving his information? Carried, thank you. 8.2, Fire Department 2021 year-end report. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Jacob, Deputy Mayor Armston, Mr. Fire Chief Hartwig. Any comments on your report?
If anybody has any questions, I can answer them.
Okay, I went through the report, found it was very well done. Lots of information. Seems like our fire department is heading in a very, very good direction. We just have to keep moving forward. It's a vital part of our township, and we need to make sure that our department volunteers have proper equipment and proper vehicles and stuff to assist residents and visitors through the township. But it was an excellent report, Chief. I'm very
Thank
pleased.
you.
Anyone, any questions and everything on the chief's report? Seeing none, all in favor of receiving his information? Carried, thank you. 8.3, 2021 Council Statement of Remuneration and Other Expenses. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Broom, Councillor Jacob. The report was there in front of you. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing none. All in favor of receiving his information? It's carried. Thank you. 8.4 bylaw enforcement report for December 2021. Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Armstrong, Councillor Jacob. Questions or comments on that report? Seeing none, all in favor is receiving his information. Carried, thank you. 8.5 Building Septic Department Report, November, December 2021. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Broom, Councillor Jacob. Questions or comments on that report? Another good report. Seems like we're on a bit of a streak. We're having a lot of construction and new builds and additions throughout the township, which is very good for us. So if there's no comments, all in favor of receiving his information? It's carried. Thank you. 8.6 Building Septic Department Report, January 2022. Mover and seconder, Councillor Broom, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Questions, comments? We're off and running in 2022. All in favor of receiving as information? Carried, thank you. 8.7 Grassland Stewardship Initiative Report. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Jacob, Councillor Broom. Is there anyone going to speak on this? Ms. Cogman, please.
Yeah, so I wanted to just bring forward to council's I guess attention or notice that staff had submitted an application to Forest Ontario through their Grassland Stewardship Initiative. And the application itself was actually drafted and put together in collaboration by Councillor Lang, Rodney Smith, who is a retired professional forester and senior manager with the Canadian Forestry Services. And I also believe that Michael Runce was an advisor on the project and the grant itself. The project itself is basically geared to do enhancements to grassland habitat at the Claybank Nature Park for outdoor learning. The project will run for 4 years from 2022 through till March of 2026. And the bulk of the funds for the project, the total project cost was a little over $19,000. And the bulk of the funding is coming through this Grassland Stewardship Initiative of $15,300. So as I mentioned, Councillor Lang and Rod Smith will be taking the lead on making sure all the initiatives that are outlined on the attachment to this report, the project work plan, they'll be spearheading this project throughout the course of the program, and staff will be submitting reports as timelines and submission due dates become due.
Thank you. I'm just is there any questions or comments on this? I think Councillor Lang is working very hard at this project for Claybank Park, and it's starting to take shape to keep moving forward. So I really appreciate all our hard work on that. If there's nothing else, all those in favor of receiving the report as information? Carried. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. 8.8 excess soil regulation report. A mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Armstrong, Councillor Broom. I asked this one to be put back on. There's been some discussion up at county council about this new policies and stuff that is, I guess, part of it's already gone through the provincial government. And I think there's another section coming up. So Mr. Frew and I had a conversation on that, and I'll ask Mr. Frew if you could do some explaining about it. Just a number of municipalities, usually the smaller municipalities are against this policy, as it will just add costs and inconvenience to doing things within the smaller townships. Whereas the policy seems to be designed more for places like the city of Toronto, or perhaps even the town of Arnprior, which is the 10th fastest growing municipality in Ontario. So Mr. Frew, could you give council members some of the information that you and I talked about, please?
Certainly. So basically, there seems to be two kind of regulations that were discussed at the county operations committee. So one of them does have a deadline to provide comments, and that is the February 24th. However, that regulation deals more with excess soil and how it impacts existing or future pits and quarries in Ontario. So this regulation will kind of deal with how they are to remediate their lands when their pits or quarries are finished. So each pit or quarry is required to reinstate their lands to a future use, or to a this change deals specifically with them, and it more aligns the current regulation with some of the changes that were set with the excess soil and some of the quality requirements that were within that regulation. So we had looked at this regulation with regards to pits and quarries, and determined that it didn't appear that the township would need to provide comments by that February 24th deadline, specifically because it is dealing specifically with aggregate sites. The other regulation is the excess soil regulation, and this regulation passed and in 2019, I believe, and started to come into effect January 2021, as well as additional requirements as of January 1st, 2022. So there are new regulations that just came into effect with regards to this regulation, and it mainly deals around if you're moving soil from a project, depending on the size of the project, you may need to register with the province, register your site. You may have to do background assessments of your site, and then you will have to implement a tracking system to track the soil that you're moving. However, for infrastructure projects, there are a number of exemptions within the regulation that will allow a lot of the projects that the township would be undertaking, as there's exemptions for work within settlement areas as defined by the Planning Act. If it's below 2,000 cubic meters of soil, then it's exempt from a lot of the regulation and the requirements of it, as well as any project that's rural in nature is not impacted by the regulation for registering it and doing required sampling or mandatory sampling of the soil for contaminants. There are some requirements that we are still obligated to do. We are still obligated to make sure that the material goes to an appropriate location, as well as that whoever is hauling the material, so any of the trucks that are hauling the material, have to have records on board of where the material came from and where it's going, as well as information about the township and where, if anybody, stops them, can provide information as to where this soil is coming from. So we likely will be exempt from a lot of the requirements and a lot of the planning issues around this regulation and the sampling requirements. However, we are still going to be impacted somewhat, and it's still unknown, exactly how these impacts are going to affect us and affect any of the contract pricing that we have. Basically, it's more of the sites that are going to receive this material. What requirements are they going to require? So the township may not be obligated to test any of the soil that because it's exempt and it doesn't meet the thresholds. However, there might be requirements where the site that it's taking to needs, so many samples or such. So we're still in a kind of an unknown, at least in Renfrew County, as to how contractors are going to see this regulation and how that's going to impact them, because they will basically be the ones that will be required to have these hauling records and keep track of that, and then if in the past, if they were taking material back to their site or their pit, they will need, now with this regulation, they're going to have to carry, they are taking ownership of that material once it gets there, so that they need to have certain processes in place. So it's one of those ones where we're still, at the infancy of this regulation and don't know the full impacts as of yet. But it is somewhat good that we won't be faced with this significant cost of doing all the mandatory testing, because a lot of our projects are either rural or nature or are below the quantity threshold. So basically, we are writing our tenders so that the contractors are required to do these hauling records, as well as requiring them to provide us with appropriate dump sites for this material that will meet this requirements of the soil, or that they will have to utilize our landfill as a depot site, and then the township will utilize that material for cover or building roads within the landfill site. So the additional cost of trucking is really the unknown, as a lot of the past disposal of the work would have been either ditching material, and that would have been distributed to residents along the road that needed fill, that could utilize that fill in a beneficial use. However, that the ability to do so is getting limited. So a long-winded way, an explanation, but hopefully that helps council with regards to these two kind of regulations.
Thanks very much, Mr. Frew. I wanted to bring this to the attention of council because I have a feeling, and just in the comment you made, that the trucking companies will be responsible for this, but you know who's going to pay for it. When they tender out projects, they're going to make sure that the cost of all this paperwork will be included in the tender. So the township or the taxpayer will be paying more for some of the projects. And the one question that I had with the quarries and stuff like that, supposedly being brought back to where they were originally, and I'll use the Braeside quarry and or the Kavanaugh quarry on Young Road. Does that mean that they're going to have to find some type of uncontaminated fill to fill that hole back up? Because if that's the case, it'll never happen. It'll cost millions and millions of dollars. So I don't know what's going to happen there. Is there any solution to that, Mr. Frew?
So my understanding is that each of these pits are required either to have a site plan or some sort of authority or authorization, I guess, from the ministry that, you know, sets out what their requirements are and how they are to restore the site. So that may not be, you know, filling or replacing all the material that they have, but it may be, you know, specifically if there's a, you know, a vertical face, maybe they have to, you know, fill that in so that, you know, animals or, you know, the usage can, you know, continue across that land without a, you know, a vertical face, you know. So those are kind of specific requirements of each site. But I think this is kind of just clarifying, you know, what type of soil can be used in these sites, because I think as an example that they utilize in some of the documentation is that, you know, some of these site plans, you know, just specifically refer to clean fill. So this new changes to this regulation will actually set out, you know, what is clean fill and what kind of contaminants, you know, are appropriate and what are not, right? So, and if there's testing required of that material before it comes in to be reused in these sites. So this regulation is just kind of, you know, I guess, making it clearer for the operators so they know, you know, what specific requirements they are needing to utilize.
Thank you. Councillor Broom.
So just, I've seen a few quarries that have been transformed back. They did have to put in a significant amount of fill. But they did get rid of like the rock face. They just blasted halfway to make it gentle so that, like Mr. Frew said, nobody walks over the edge. Plant wild grass. What I was told and what I've seen is it's beautify the land. So two quarries I know down near the Vars area, they actually built a subdivision in one. So they brought in enough fill that the houses were in essence built right on the rock face. Down on the bottom, the fill was brought up and they have a subdivision. And that one there took about 3 years to complete. And it, I know I personally worked on it. So it does take a lot of money, but these companies are made to put away so much money per yard that they haul away. So they, you know, it's not like it's going to be an all at once thing. And it's between these two things that were brought up. A lot of trucking companies, City of Ottawa has had this kind of thing in, my goodness, probably 5 years before I was put off work. So they've been around for a while. It's just they're finally doing something with the ministry now and mandating it instead of just, you know, certain projects, because a lot of companies were backfilling with contaminated soils. So that's what's forced this. Before, somebody could dig up a sewer line and go backfill a house. So they're just pretty much protecting the people. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for that information. It's good to bring that to council's attention, I believe. Any other comments on this? All in favor of receiving this information? Carried, thank you. We're on to information items. 9.1 correspondence from James Alessio, Sleepy Hollow Road. Over and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Adamson, Councillor Broom. Questions or comments on the information that council received? I just had been thinking about this. And all Canaan Road or Cannon Road, whichever way you want to pronounce it, that was done to prevent parties with big bonfires back in a bush area. This is a little bit different on Sleepy Hollow Road. And I was wondering if instead of having the gates that we have there now, if we could put up gates similar to the ones that are on trails. And then have the property owners put up no trespassing signs. People would have to stay on the road allowance. If people continually disobey the rules, then we could go back to closing it off. Just a thought. Any comments? Deputy Mayor?
Just a couple. This is one of those issues that we run into from time to time that just takes up a lot more time than any of us actually anticipated at the outset. It appears that there's a logical and simple solution to an issue, and then it turns into something more and something different as time moves on. I don't think that this situation is closed. I do believe that there's been significant evidence pointing towards more people using the trail than what we originally thought, and it might need a revisit. I didn't like some of what was written in the letter and the way that it was written. I'm not sure if the intention was half of a threat in saying that we would go to the media and making mention of upcoming elections. However, I guess that's just nature of the course of the way that we do business right now. So it's unfortunate that that was in that kind of tone I picked up on. Hopefully it wasn't intended. But I certainly do think that we will be revisiting this Sleepy Hollow Road situation down the road. Pardon the pun.
Thank you. I just add my voice to yours. I don't take kindly to threats either. I see that as there, but sometimes in the heat of the moment, people say things, but they're quite able to do whatever they wish to do. Council cannot be intimidated by comments like that. They have to do the job that we were elected to do. Councillor Jacob.
I completely agree, Mayor Packett, and I think your suggestion of taking a look at alternatives for gates, like we had talked about as council at our last meeting in terms of looking into the pricing involved in the different gate styles that could be possible to allow for both motorized and non-motorized uses. I think it's something worth looking into, and I'd hope that council could direct staff to do so. I do recall our decision at that point was to keep the gates closed for the winter and to revisit in the spring. And I also do support that direction that council had made back then, given that there wouldn't be any possibility of installing a new gate at this point in time and at this point in the season.
You are correct, sir. Councillor Broome, you have any comments on?
Not that everybody else has already said. So
Okay.
Hopefully it was a tone not meant that the way we read it, but if it was, then,
So,
but no, I don't want to add. I can, reiterate what all three of you have already said, so.
okay, thank you. So I'm going to suggest that as council had determined previously that through this winter, the gates would stay in place and revisit this in the spring. And I think that was mentioned to Jim, that we're still considering other options to move forward with this. And I think I will request staff to bring this back to council, say, end of April, 1st of May, whenever the snow and the frost and everything's gone, because if we do decide to change the style of gate, we need to be able to get into the ground. So then the frost has got to come out of the ground. So I'll leave that up to staff, end of April, 1st of May, sometime in that area, they'll bring this back, and then hopefully we'll make a final decision either to leave it as is or to change the type of gate. This Councillor Jacob, please.
Just a request onto that staff direction that if staff potentially in the recreation department and roads and services can take a look at the different gate options and bring forward that information to council so that we can make a decision at that meeting rather than having multiple meetings on the same topic.
Yep, I think that could be accommodated. Anything else? Sorry about that.
I was just going to say, at least it wasn't my dog this time.
Well, I've already seen mine walking back.
Soon enough, we'll be in person.
So the staff are good with the direction that council has given?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We had a mover and second on that, so all in favor of the direction given? Carried, thank you. 9.2, media release. Funding support for Renfrew County VTAC, February the 9th. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Jacob, Councillor Broom. This was a project undertaken by Warden Robinson and Chief Mike Nolan and a couple of team members with the warden to help supply or have available healthcare throughout Renfrew County, and also relieve the amount of time people spend in hospitals. And it has been proven to work exceptionally well to the point where a lot of other counties and municipalities are looking at this system, and hopefully the entire province will look at this system. Anyway, in the Roma conference, the warden had a virtual meeting with the Minister of Health, Minister Elliott, and shortly thereafter, the announcement was made that the funding is going to be there through 2023 for VTAC, and I'm sure the warden will be continuing to push this program to have it funded for a long time into the future, because it is a very, very good system that they've come up with to help all the residents of Renfrew County. Any comments, questions? Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Well, we've all commented on this particular project before, so I won't touch on, the benefits of it. But what I really do hope is that it provides the impetus for other pilot projects where somebody has a brilliant idea And they get permission to put it in place in a controlled environment for a fixed amount of time to see if it actually works. And if it does, great, expand upon it. If it doesn't, then it was a limited sample size and we tried our best. We thought we had the right idea and it didn't work out. So we just moved on to the next one. So sometimes there's a fear for tackling new projects because people aren't quite sure if they will work or, they aren't thought out to the nth degree. But that's an impedance on progress. And it's an impedance on innovation. If we want to be 100% fail safe before we try a new idea, then we'll never try it. So these pilot projects allow people to get the 80% right and then use lessons learned to improve on the 20s. So I hope it's an impetus for others to try something like this because you can obviously see the benefits of a well thought out and strategic plan put into implementation and we're seeing the results of this one. So hopefully.
Thank you very much for those comments. As was well said. Councillor Broom?
Well, and with this project alone, it's been proven in the worst days that we've known and the better days before, because this was started before the pandemic. So it's been, it's actually had a significant amount of different scenarios and whatever, and it has been invaluable during the pandemic. And I think that's why it's gained so much momentum, that it works normal days and it also flows during a pandemic, which, you don't want folks gathering. You can suit somebody up in full PPE, send them into a person's home where you're not transmitting a whole bunch of different diseases. So this is great news.
Yeah. Yes, I've already passed on congratulations to the warden on her efforts in achieving this milestone. Any other comments? All in favor of receiving this information? Carried. Thank you. Item 10.1, Halton Hills Dissolve Ontario Land Tribunal. I apologize, Ms. Young. I forgot to send a note that I would be supporting this motion. It's in what the motion is saying, that these things like LPAT or the OMB are restricting progress and development in municipalities, that the municipalities should have the right to move forward with. For example, like if we were to, go on with housing developments and somebody objects to that, it could be tied up for a long time before in tribunals before any result is determined, and it could be to the detriment of the municipality. And that way only a couple of people could influence the entire township. So I'm definitely supporting this. Councillor Broom, I see, is raising his hand to be the seconder. So comments, Councillor Jacob, were you wanting to make a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a step in the right direction. The provincial government a few years ago attempted to move in the right direction with the formation of LPAT, by making it a lot more emphasis on the local government's decision-making processes. And I think that was a good decision. Unfortunately, that has been revoked with the Ontario Land Tribunal. So this is another opportunity for our council and councils across the province to provide that advocacy for whatever the provincial government decides to do on the Ontario Land Tribunal front. It would be very much in their best interest and the best interest of all Ontarians for them to place the emphasis and place the decision-making authority where it belongs at the local level. And I completely agree with everything that you said a little earlier, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? So all in favor of supporting the motion? Carried. Could even go so far as to draft up our own similar motion. Maybe even the stronger wording. I'll leave that up to the CAO. That's her area of expertise, so I'll leave that up to the CAO. Okay, thank you.
Can we just get a mover and seconder for accepting?
I thought we had Deputy Mayor Armstrong, Councillor Broom. Sorry. So why can't we get one mover and one seconder for the entire meeting?
You can do it by section if you really want to, and if people agree to do that.
Okay. New business, 12.1, Arm Prairie Library Recreation numbers. Councillor Jacob has left the screen. Need a mover and seconder, get it on the floor, and it's Deputy Mayor Armstrong and Councillor Broom. So in discussion with the CAO, I think we've been asking, and Ms. Cogman has been asking for the actual numbers of residences that use the library and the Nick Smith Center that live in McNabb Braeside, the actual numbers that we're paying for. And I really don't care what the numbers are. I just want factual numbers. And we've asked several times, and we have never received them, the numbers that we want, stating that according to the Library Act, they're not allowed to give us that information. And yet the library in Renfrew, who we pay the out-of-town rate to anybody who goes or uses that library, is required to fill out a form and hand it into the township with their name and address on it, and receive a check back from us mailed to their address to cover the costs of using the library. So in discussions, I suggested that we write a formal letter with a motion passed by council to the library and to the town of Arm Prairie, asking for those actual numbers to be provided to the township. It's not like we're going to run down the road waving everybody's name and address saying, gosh, I know you use the library or anything. But I feel with the money that we're paying for those services, we should be entitled to know who we're paying for. So what I'm asking council for is a resolution to send it to the library board and Town of Armpire requesting these numbers be provided to the township. I know we've asked through emails and stuff before, but I would like to have an actual resolution passed by council to get these numbers. Deputy Mayor.
Are you looking for just a gross number, or are you looking for like the names of the individuals? Do you just want to know that 482 people use the library and that's it? Or are you looking for the names of 482 people?
It's, no, I don't need all the people, it's the number of households.
Okay.
So it would be the address.
Okay.
Because that's how we pay by household. Like if we were to reimburse people, they would have to provide their name and address of their household in order to get the check. So I can't understand why we can't get the addresses of the households that we're paying for. Councillor Broom, you have any comments on that? No?
I think this is something that we've asked for quite often, and I agree with you. You know, I believe, you know, it's a simple request.
I think it is because if, you know, there is ways of getting it. Other ways of getting it, the information required, but I don't want to have to go that way. But so I'm going to put forward that resolution from council that we formally send a request to the library and the Town of Armpire in regards to the Nick Smith Center of the list of households that actually use the facilities. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Armstrong, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Are we good, CAO? Okay, I guess Councillor Jacob can rejoin. Okay, we're back. There's no notice of motions. We're on to 15 public questions about anything that was discussed in tonight's meeting. See, Jim has got his hand up there. You're muted, Jim.
There. All systems go?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, just wanted to mention to you is that certainly there is no meaning of trying to put out anything threatening to anybody. All I want to do is make sure that people are informed on where we are at with this. And I'd like to know, I within a week, I got nearly 70 signatures, and I'd just like to know how many signatures you need to have these gates removed, because we're going to do an online, and you know, that's what I'm asking you. If you want me to put in the paper so that we can see, get our numbers for, you know what I mean? I thought, you know, 70 signatures or whatever to 2 signatures for it would have been enough, but I'll be glad to get more. There's not an issue there. You know, I'll do that part if you'd like.
Well, that's entirely up to you, Jim, but it really doesn't affect things whether it's 10 or 700.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
So if you've been listening this evening, which I think you are, the council is committed to, first of all, the gates are to stay in place this winter. And now we've made a commitment to revisit this in April or May, of which I suggested to you some time ago that we were still thinking about this project and trying to come up with a solution that suits everybody. So now we're going to revisit this later on this year and see if there's a different style of gate that would allow ATVs and snowmobiles and horses and walkers and stuff like that, the use of the road allowance. So-
Is there any way we can just open the gate for the winter? Like, there's no vehicles you can get in there. The only people that are gonna use it are the people walking or snowmobiling. No, there's, you know what I mean? There's no other people. The gates are still there. They aren't changing, you know what I mean? They're just unlocked and open to allow the snowmobilers, snowshoers, walkers, anybody who wants to go and use that. There's no, you know, nobody, I don't know if you're worried about trash being thrown off a snowmobile or I don't know if.
See, that would be, if you heard my comment, if we're going to request that the owners of the property put up no trespassing signs. And if people disobey the signs, and if they do litter, either somebody from the snowmobile or ATV club should really take it upon themselves to get in there and clean it up. Because if it continues that people are continually trespassing on private property, then it doesn't give us any alternative but to close the gates back up again. But as far as opening for this winter, that would have to be a motion put through to council. And I'd have to also ask Mr. Frew if they have I guess they'd have to take a backhoe or something to get it through the snow to even be able to open the.
Okay, well, let's not bother with that then. Let's just not waste any more tax money on that. Let's leave it be for the winter then. That's fine. You're gonna relook at it again?
Yes, in
Right.
late April or May, and the staff direction was to look at different types of gates so that it would keep vehicles like cars and trucks out of there, but allow for snowmobiles and ATVs and walkers and that sort of thing.
Okay, okay. Again, I just want to emphasize there's certainly no meaning to trying to put any type of threatening thing out to anybody. I just want to make that very clear.
Okay, well, it's just the way the letter was worded, Jim.
Okay.
And
I'm-
council, I think every member of council would sort of take a look at that as, you know, if you don't do what we want, we're going to really raise a stink. So I think this council is a pretty strong council that if you decided to go that way, that would be entirely up to you.
I'm trying to do this as the best, you know what I mean? I'm trying to do the right thing here. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
So you know what? I'm trying to do whatever is in the interest of not only the people here, but the landowners there too. You know what I mean? A happy medium.
that's lots of times the best way is a compromise in which nobody is 100% happy.
That is correct. I'm in agreement with that. Okay. Well, thank you all again.
Okay, Jim, you have a good evening.
You too now.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wants to speak, Ms. Lee? No. So we're on to 16.1, which is a closed meeting under section 239(2) subsection E for the purpose of discussing litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, township buildings. I need a mover and seconder to move into close, please. Counselor Jacob, Counselor Broom, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Stop recording, please. Open. Thank you. Notice the next council meetings, March 1st, 6th, March 15th, 5:30 for a public meeting under the Planning Act, and March 15th, the regular council meeting at 6 o'clock. Thank you very much this evening, council. There was some good discussion, some good information that come out this evening. So I need a mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw. Deputy Mayor Armstrong, Councillor Jacob, all in favor? It's carried. Have a good night, folks. We're adjourned.